You know, I know I've already done the MERP system, and I did it using the original system, how I had this set up. Now that I have this face down, I want to go back over time and reconstitute these things. So I'm going to begin with Moria, the Dwarven city. And anybody who's ever watched Stephen Jackson's Lord of the Rings knows what Moria is. If you read J.R.R. Tolkien's novels, you definitely know what Moria is. And this is one of all the books, this is one of my most fondest. I've read this one so many times I can't begin to count. You can see the wear and tear on the book itself. One of the reasons I loved it is because it's such a detailed backstory of the Dwarvish race and this massive mansion, fortress, city, citadel, community, civilization that they created and everything in it. So we got our detailed climate and ecology, the plant life that you can find there, various critters, other than the bad things, the obvious orcs and the bullrog, which it covers with fish and food sources, brief history, founding of Khazad-dûm. It says, after the birth of the elves, the seven fathers of the dwarves awoke and came forth in the world. Their seven kindred began to explore their new lands, finding things of beauty, blah, blah, blah. The building of Durin's mansion, their travels, ending up where they did. The dwarves of Belgos and Norgod, origin of strife between the dwarves and the Ascender, the golden years of the Second Age, the origins of the name of Moria, flight of the dwarves, the fate of the seven dwarven rings, the war and the naming of Moria, the gift of Durin's ring, the coming of the bullrog. And only the Durins folk seek the afflictions and deprivations of their brethren. Protected by the impregnable gates of Moria, they were labored there for 3 millennia, digging, sculpting, and fortifying their awesome hold. Builders added strength, stately stairs, lofty towers. 3 to their northwest, even deeper, came under the 3 peaks. The city embodied 7 levels and 7 deeps, its mind spread over many more. Durin's kindred amassed a wealth beyond comprehension during these long days, largely because they held the only known source of mithril on Middle Earth. Demand for the exquisite metal ran high, and due to its mithril vein, Moria reached far beneath the red horn. With each passing year, the mithril became harder to claim and therefore more valuable. The delvings progressed unceasingly until the dwarves unleashed the terror that drove them from the mines. And it goes on and talks about the bulwark. This is a key thing. In the history of Middle Earth, pretty much every Dwarven line, but the line of Durin, suffered some pretty bad fallbacks. And one of their biggest foes, other than themselves and goblins and orcs, is dragons. And at no point did any dragon ever set foot in Khazad-dûm and breach its walls. Smog does this in Erebor. Smog would have not succeeded at Moria. I believe at the height of Khazad-dûm's power base, if a dragon like Smog had showed up, the dwarves would have handed him his head. Well, there had been a lot of destruction, don't get me wrong. There had been a lot of death and destruction, but the dwarven power at that point was just that strong. They would have been able to defeat him. But things change, right? And then the Great War between the dwarves and the orcs, the Tale of Thor. All this stuff is pretty much covered in the movies and the books. You don't need me to go down the details of them. Moria's the later years. See, I love these artwork. The war against Azog and the orcs. The end of the Third Age. Balin and the return to Moria. And we get the timeline based by the year and the age. This is all stuff I always find fascinating and I like to read. Dwarves of Moria, the Khazad. It's more about their physical character, their appearance, their manner. Dwarf women. See, like, dwarves are somber, quiet, possessive, suspicious, pugnacious, introspective, often very greedy. This character has led them to seclude themselves in strongholds centered around rich veins of iron and precious metals. There they mine and create works of superb craftsmanship, at the same time guarding their hoards with a wariness that approaches paranoia. Like their maker, they are fabulous smiths and unsurpassed workers of stone. Dwarven items are often stunningly beautiful, but practicality underlines all their artifice. This attitude also affects their views on magic. Dwarves know of spells and enchantments, but generally scoff at the ways of elves and other conjurers, preferring instead to use such power in the making of permanent physical items. Dwarven mages are unheard of. The Khazad are also known for their military prowess, superbly equipped and unyielding in purpose. They fight without thought of retreat or quarter. They favor overpowering weapons as rugged and brutal as the dwarves themselves, heavy crossbows, axe hammers, and war manocks, wearing heavy armor and cruel-looking helms with cowls, face visors, or masks resembling terrifying horned beasts. A force of Dwarven warriors presents a formidable and disturbing profile. And it says dwarf women. Relatively unfertile, lacking women, dwarves rarely sire children, even take wives. Barely a third of the race is composed of dwarf women, and many of them desire mates they cannot have. Fewer than 1 in 3 dwarf men marry for the Naga mate for life and will not join with one they do not desire above all others. Like most rare jewels, female dwarves are coveted and obsessively protected in ways unlike those of any other race. Fortunately, the Naga are enamored of crafts. Many never crave to love another, so they need no marital union. This introspective fascination with the arts and creation encourages stability among the race, easily torn by envy and umbrage. Dwarf women are a proud lot, fiercely protective of their rights. They stand as equals in all affairs but those of war. Dwarfs face no restrictions on their status or their mobility, although they travel less than dwarf men. They require secure dwellings for the birthing of their offspring, so most remain sheltered from the rest of the world. In fact, dwarf women are so remote and rarely recognized that some believe they do not exist, since their voice and visage are akin to those of the males. These false legends are strengthened, even though many men presume that dwarves grow from stone. Cosmic language, worship, and ritual. Durin's folk itself. And this is where I get a lot of my information on how how dwarven attitudes and lifestyle and style. So we got hair and dress, lifestyle, reverence for the death for their god, dwarven technology. Here it says, Negrin, the first half differ from their brethren in less obvious ways. Those Durins travel all their beards to grow freely throughout their lives, wear them forked and braided. Then they tuck the whiskers into their belts, allowing slack for sudden movement. Many plait over their flowing hair as well, and in each case they utilize elaborate knot patterns particular to their family. Dwarves folk also employ a distinctly colored hood in lieu of a cowled cloak. Most lack adornment, rather, they rely on bright, solid hues to establish otherwise graceless lines. Flaps or a mask are often sewn into the hood so the face can be covered or protected. Dwarf women make widespread use of these coverings. Durin's dwarves wear the hoods over traditional dwarven garb, leather jerkin or wool tunic, woolen linen shirt, tight-fitting trousers, and one-piece shoes or inner boots. When active or about in the world, these Nargum don heavy leather boots and cloak or shawl fastened with decorative brooch. Given their fondness for crafts, all their clothing is well made and generously accented with refined borders and brilliant trimwork. Dwarf lords wear even finer garments, often add gold or silver tassels to the peaks of their hoods. Just a good general information. And the crafts work in their tools, their techniques and smelting and forging, wireworks and mortars. That's another thing that I really liked about this particular uh, setup of this particular book, because it gives me a lot of information as a GM for creating. When I create dwarven citadels and holds, I have this wealth of material to work with. I'm going to create a story. I have depth and detail to the background for it. Dwarven warcraft, shields, weaponry, dwarven trade, we can price exchange, prices in Moria and out. I ran a campaign once when uh, Moria was at its height, Cousindom, and these people, going in and out of this place, it was just something to behold. Such an active and powerful structure, and how much of its influence actually spread, how far it spread across central Middle Earth. The Dwarven structure of the city. This is also an awesome addition because it gives me a lot of working stuff for underground structures. And here's the special minerals table. I've utilized this numerous times for my D&D stuff. Construction methods, building techniques, gives you better visuals. Rob Gustis had just recently went on, relative recently to this creation, was on vacation in Michigan, I think he said, and he went into a cavern or a mine, into a mine as a tour, and he discovered there's this. It's one thing to envision it in our heads, it's another thing to actually physically be there. Now, I've never been down in a working mine or an ex-working mine, but like I said, I've been into several cavern systems. I went into the Mark Twain caves in Hannibal, Missouri. Unfortunately, I was in there with about 150 screaming middle school, fifth graders. I was in the Crystal Caves a couple times, which are up in northeastern Iowa, and I went into Spook Cave a couple times, which is in northeastern Iowa, and each is a different type of environment, vastly different. And yet there's a lot of similarities. Spook Cave is a flooded cavern system, so you go in by boat. You ride a little, you 5 or 6, you get into a john boat, a flatboat, and they take you back in about a mile and a half into the cavern, and it's lit and so on and so forth. But you still get the experience. Imagine your player characters having to wade knee deep or up to waist deep in some cases through this cavern, to this cave system to achieve their goal the entire time. What would it be like for them to try to camp and to stay? How would they stay dry? How would they, just the idea. And then the crystal caves were deeper. They were much cooler. They were damp as well, but in a different way. And you had all these interesting stalagmites and stalactites and these crystalline formations, hence the term crystal caves. And everything was still damp and kind of slimy, and you didn't think of that. Now I went down into the caverns in Hannibal, Missouri, and they were dry. There was some dampness there, and you could hear the water in the background, the dripping. There was a little bit of water. I think a small stream crossed through one section, but for the most part, they were dry caverns, and a vastly different experience than it was those other two. So I'm just pointing that out. Having actually physically gone into one of those, a number of these in my youth gave me some advantages for envisioning when I was creating this stuff for the games. And having book material in lieu of helps too. So we get, perfectly and not so perfectly designed. This is, a road system that's set up for purpose, not for aesthetics. And yet we have areas that are definitely set up for aesthetics. So not everything is created equal. And the more remoter, the less, this is an example. This is an access way. So you've got pits and you've got holes, you've got drops, and you've got things where if you don't know the class and you don't have a light, you might be in trouble. Just saying. Beautiful set. I love this sort of stuff. It was this kind of stuff when I was in my that influenced my own artwork when I started to create game systems. When I was creating my game worlds and things, I tried to improve my art skills. And then, like I said, there was a lot of information thing in here that gave me ideas. I didn't quite catch. You really here's a good pit trap and how the mechanical functions, the cutaway. Gave me some knowledge as to how these things are. It's one thing to have them, in your head, and they talk about it in D&D, but they don't go into depth. Now here's a different version called a wheel. It's called a wheel trap. You can see it. There's the corridor and these fake walls, and here's the big stone wheels, and there's lots of them. So they start doing this. It's all of Indiana Jones, which was another source for me of developing pits or traps and underground environments and things like that. But look at the jungle cavern that Indiana goes into in Peru or whatever it is, and how vastly different that is from the stuff I just described. Then we get into Moria's evil inhabitants, the orcs and trolls, the beasts, the Bolrog, and all the stats and stuff needed for them. The kingdom of the Bolrog. Moria's layout, overview, stats, central tiers of city. And we get into the bigger maps of the overall. This just gives you an actual idea in vast just how vast Moria is, how vast Ithildin is. So when the nine walkers of the Lord of the Rings pass through Moria, this is, very good reason why Gandalf wanted to avoid going here in the first place, and why he had to struggle with keeping him on track, because it's such a labyrinth, and this is just the massive overview of the main highways. So you imagine that this whole map is just, this is the huge main halls and the connecting major highways. Well, there's tens of thousands of little pathways and access ways and travel ways and stairways and chambers that literally riddle all of this. Makes it much more complicated than it really is, or much more complicated than these maps portray. But like I said, I do love this stuff because it gave me a lot of working knowledge about how to create a truly labyrinth underworld environment. This and the Dungeoneer's Guide are my two most valuable tools when it comes to creating underground environments. And if you haven't seen the Dungeoneer's Guide from first edition, I highly recommend getting a PDF of it or looking at one if you ever get a chance. Just the 3D cutaway version of the cavern system is worth if nothing else in there. Just that one section is worth having, in my opinion. I mean, charts. I.C.E loves its charts. So do I. Makes things much more easier. And we a little bit of color. More. Like I said, one of the things that I like about I.C.E is that it has this little section here. Pretty much every one of their books has it. It's converting statistics for any major FRP, and a fantasy role-playing game system. We call it role-playing today, fantasy role-playing. Anyway, so here's your stats based on a D100, the D100, the D20 system, the D6 system, and a D12 system. Easily converts without a lot of effort, a lot of hassle, and a lot of clunky, chunky mechanics. Somehow or another, everything seems to keep moving. See, it's another thing. I'm looking forward to having a house so I can have a table that I can get a better setup for this so it doesn't keep moving around. Now, there's only so much you can do with this, which includes this stuff here that has to hang down. Killing me here. You're killing me here, Smalls. There we go. Nothing like Saturday morning cartoons. Alright. Moria. Great module. Get your hands on it if you can. Get a PDF of it if you can't. This thing can be played in any fantasy setting. Play your Pathfinder. You can use this as Pathfinder. Just telling it. Love it. Hate it. Ignore it. Is where we've been.